guys, this is the second video taking you through the creative writing planning process that I set out in the first video, which is the drop shift, zoom in, zoom out method. There was a video previously you should have already watched which was telling you how to do the drop paragraph. So this one is all about how you use the shift. So let's just do a title, shift, paragraph, underline that. Now, what we're looking for really in this shift paragraph is to show the examiner that we know how to use structure. So we're going to do something a little bit different with structure. And what the point is to give us a chance to not have an entirely linear narrative or descriptive piece. Hopefully you know what that means by linear narrative, but it's not all going to happen in chronological order. Now, the reason a writer might use a flashback or a flash forward or some sort of shift will often be to emphasise something within the description. It's not something you just force in, and in a sense we are kind of forcing it in here. So you've got to think carefully about where you want your shift to go. And by where, I mean time or place or atmosphere. I don't mean just place. So let's just make it clear here. It means your piece is non-linear. Okay, so that's the first thing. The piece becomes non-linear. What you therefore have to do is you have to make this clear. And you might do that by some sort of time phrase within the first sentence or two. Or you're gonna really clearly show that you've switched somewhere. Okay, it's not, the reader shouldn't be confused as to where you are at that point. Now the next thing is that you can pick a wide range of things. Okay, so you might want to do so for example, you might want to do a flashback. If it's a narrative, you might want to give some sort of memory from the morning, or if it's a descriptive piece, you might want to describe that location earlier on in the day or a long time ago. You might want to do a flash forward. And we've got technical terms for these, analepsis, prolepsis. We also want to think about a shift in setting. So for example, with the one that I did in the last video, this beach setting, which we're going to be using again today, is kind of this peaceful place that somebody might be, and then you could shift, for example, to like an inner city, a really busy, hectic place that that the person has tried to get away from. Well, that's a good way to shift a setting as well. But all of these are going to result in some sort of shift in the mood or the atmosphere. Okay, and that's where you're going to get the good marks, because what you're going to do, this paragraph is going to allow you to create detailed juxtaposition. Now remember, juxtaposition is ideas, characters, whatever it is, things that contrast or that clash. And what we're going to be doing with our paragraph is trying to juxtapose from the drop. So we're kind of trying to shift things in a really different direction and do something interesting structurally. So what we'll do now is we'll move on. What I'll just add to that create detailed juxtaposition is you want to use ideas from the drop. So we're not just going to be moving straight on to a new paragraph and forgetting everything else that we've written, because that doesn't make sense, okay? So, have to make this clear. Shift in mood, and we're looking for some juxtaposition, okay? Right, let's go on to the model paragraphs. Let's just put a subheading here. Like that. So what I'm going to do for this model paragraph is I'm going to be using the same image as the first video, so which is this lovely kind of peaceful beach setting. And if you've recently watched the other video, you will know that at the end of that paragraph that I wrote, I kind of hinted at what my shift was going to be right at the end. I kind of said that something was going to happen. So if you remember, I started with that list of 3, I focused on the waves and what the waves were doing, and the kind of blurring of the boundary, the blues, with the sky and the waves. Then I talked about the sand, then I talked about the heat, then the palm trees, and then takes a second for this paradise to become a living hell. So what I'm going to do now in my second paragraph is I'm going to describe that storm, and I'm going to try and follow a similar structure. So I'm going to start probably with a list of 3. I'm going to do the blues, so I'm going to describe the sea and the sky and how that's changed. Then I'm going to move to the sand. What's the sand doing now in the storm? Then I'm going to talk about the heat, or perhaps not the heat. Then the palm trees, and then I'm going to mention something about it probably being a hell. So I'm almost using this as my kind of guide for how my shift paragraph goes. And that's kind of what you're going to do. You're going to write your drop, and then you're going to use your drop to write your shift, and you're going to be quite clever with it. It's a good way to get a structural piece into a piece of creative writing that is only 45 minutes long. So, as I said, my other paragraph started with the list of 3, tranquil, peaceful, calm. So I'm going to do the same again, starting with a list of 3, but I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to kind of do antonyms. So I'm going to go for chaotic, turbulence, restless. It's kind of the opposite of calm. Okay, so that's a list of 3. That clearly shows that something's changed from the first paragraph, but I'm going to just make it a little bit clear, okay? So my next sentence was about the waves and the colour of the horizon. I'm just going to make it clear that something has shifted. So I'm going to put some hours later, and I mentioned the azure blur in the horizon, waves as they reach the shore, shades of azure. The shades, I'm going to use that phrase again. So the shades of azure have turned. I would go into a black, but I don't think the sky would change that quickly. I'm going to go for charcoal grey. Some hours later, the shades of azure have turned charcoal grey. So I talked in my first paragraph about there being a blur between the water and the air, but I'm going to switch that up now. I want it to be 2 really separate things. So I'm going to put the darkness of the sky is only broken by, I'm going to personify the clouds, I think. I was going to go for angry, but that's quite dull. Enraged clouds which threaten the sea below. So before there was this sense of the sea and sky being together, now I'm suggesting that the clouds in the sky are almost threatening the sea, because obviously the storm is coming and it's going to come from the air above. Okay. What we've got next is a description of the sand as crystal coating the ground, silky walkway, refreshment of the cool waves. So I'm going to completely reverse that again. What I'm going to imagine is that the sand is like agitated and it's moving, because obviously the wind is going to be growing, isn't it? So the sand is almost going to be whipping up in kind of like mini whirlpools, little mini tornadoes that kind of are stinging or threatening. You know, if you've ever been on a beach and it's windy and the sand kind of like hits you, it can sting quite a bit. So I'm gonna turn that crystal, the pieces of crystal in the first paragraph, I'm going to turn it to like shards of glass. So to kind of again use that juxtaposition. So I'll go for I'm going to start with shards of glass, straight into the metaphor. Shards of glass erupt from the ground, agitated by the, I want to say cold wind, because I want to start now with changing it from this kind of heat to this kind of this coldness of the storm. I'm just going to put the bitter wind which forces its way through the grains of sand. So we've gone from this silky walkway to these like shards of glass erupting, being agitated by the wind. Okay, so the next thing that I described was the scorched and baking amber sun radiating across the paradise, and the sand burning the toes. So I'm going to change that slightly. So I'm going to have the sun, I want the sun gone essentially, because I've talked about darkness obviously, and it's later on in the evening. So I'm going to kind of describe it hiding away, again personifying it. So have I started many with the, just that one, so that's fine. I described it in the first paragraph as amber, so I'm going to go for the once amber sun is now nowhere to be seen, comma, it hides cowardly, no, it hides like a coward, nice little simile, and seeks refuge from the bubbling storm. Bubbling, troublesome, something storm. Impending, ominous. Ominous is a good word to know. Ominous kind of means like threatening, foreboding. It's a good word. Okay. That's my mention, therefore. That's me juxtaposing with the heat from before. I'm just, rather than saying it's cold though, I'm just saying that the sun's gone. The next thing I described was the towering palm trees, which offer, so it said, towering palm trees offer welcome shade from the burning rays. They reach out their arms to shelter and protect anyone resting in this paradise. Obviously, it's easy to reverse that, because the palm trees, once the wind picks up, the palm trees are going to be blowing everywhere. They're not going to offer shade. In fact, they're going to feel like something else you have to hide from. So they're no longer protecting. Let's start with that. No longer a source of protection. There's got the towering palm trees become another deadly. So I talked about their arms reaching out. So I think it's best to kind of keep that personification. The towering palm trees become another deadly force. Their arms wildly attacking the air around them, threatening the ground below. And my very last line then was, tranquility surrounds everything here, but it only takes a second for this paradise to become a living hell. And I want to link back to that. I've said it only takes a second, but here I've said it's hours later, so I don't want to kind of get myself mixed up and go wrong. But I want to say something about it becoming a living hell. Something about the storm. We'll go for distant yet threatening. The impending storm has destroyed this once tranquil paradise. I don't want to just rewrite a living hell again, so and turns it into your worst nightmare, maybe. Distant yet threatening, the impending storm has destroyed this once tranquil paradise. And formed. I'm going to put the perfect nightmare. And what I've done there, right at the end, is try to kind of have an oxymoron. Because obviously this paragraph is really different to the first one where everything's kind of perfect and wonderful. And then I've gone to nightmare. So those kind of two words next to each other as a noun phrase is just allowing me to kind of really pull together the ideas from both paragraphs. Okay, so your shift paragraph, it's really important that you think really carefully about where you want to go, and where you go is meant to highlight something about the original paragraph. So in my first paragraph, I show this kind of really idealised version of the perfect setting, this perfect paradise-like beach. But my second paragraph is all about proving that maybe those sorts of paradises don't exist and nothing can ever be that perfect and calm, and that it only takes a second for everything to change. So when you're doing your shift paragraphs, try and think carefully about what you want to show. You're trying to show another side of the place that you originally were describing, or show another aspect of it, to show that it kind of it exists beyond the picture that you've created, and that it can be different kind of things all at once. The first task that you need to do is choose something that you wrote last week, and try and do a shift for it. So you did a few pieces last week, and what you've got to do now is try and reverse it. I would suggest you get the paragraph in front of you. It makes it so much easier to kind of look at it and deconstruct it and think, right, how is this going to change? And if you're going to use one of the ones of the school, for example, and you described it really busy in the morning, maybe you're going to describe it at the end of the day when everyone's gone home. Or you have the jetty setting, maybe you described it as a calm place as well. Maybe you're going to use some ideas from mine and make it kind of a storm. Again, it's just for you to practice. Hopefully that was useful, and I'll see you in the next video for the zoom in paragraph.